And now we have the pleasure of welcoming a man who has been a great advocate and leader for the cause of diversity in sport. He is the president of the International Paralympic Committee. A former athlete, he was an elite wheelchair basketball player. He has been president of the International Paralympic Committee since the year 2001. And since then, he has definitely brought his movement, or the entire Paralympic movement, through many hoops towards greater and genuine inclusiveness and gender equality in sport. Please give a warm welcome to Sir Philip Craven.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and it is really great to be here. And following on from other speakers' lack of use of total protocol, Madame la Présidente, and all friends of women and hopefully of men also. Great to be here at the 6th conference. The fact that I couldn't stand was immaterial. I haven't been to the previous 5, I had to admit that. But I have tried to interact as closely as I can with women for some considerable time. Equality, well, yes, equality is one of the 4 values of the Paralympic movement. Courage is another, believe it or not, and followed by determination and then inspiration. But as I said at the press conference, where is it? I know, of course, I've got my slides up there now. But leading the change and being the change, I think it's a wonderful title for the 3 days that everybody's going to spend together. Leading, well, for me, leading, it's creating an environment where you encourage everyone to come forward if they have the sufficient either skills, but particularly the determination and will to do something in their lives, and in our case, to do something with sport. So we have to create an environment, but then we all have to be the change. And you know how many of you have had that situation where you've been in a meeting, should I put my hand up, should I not? Should I put my hand up, should I not? And if you think there's something to be done, don't think the person next to you will necessarily do it. Do it yourself, and then it'll get done. So, I see we've gone on to the 2nd slide already. It's not a problem, but just leave that lady there. But really, already there's an amazing spirit here. Great friendship, happiness, it would appear, also, and I'm very, very happy about that. But you know, when the real Edith Piaf's name was mentioned, that gave me an extra buzz. All the hairs went up on my arm, and that woman had something incredible. I never knew her, of course, but she was what spirit is all about. And I believe that we've got amazing opportunities here. Now, we've moved on a little bit too quick here. Can I go back to the 2nd slide? That's it. That's perfect. So just leave it there for now. And so we know, it's already been said, women have a significant role to play in sport at all levels. As athletes, as coaches, as officials, and leaders. They see things differently to men, and thank God that you do. And through the IPC's Women in Sport Committee, we aim to ensure greater gender equality across all of the Paralympic movement. Here you see Natalia Partyka of Poland, who competed for Poland in both the Olympic and the Paralympic Games in Beijing and London. Moving on to slide 3. But just by the very nature of what we do, the IPC strives for equality and challenges stereotypes on a daily basis. We tackle double discrimination: discrimination against impairment and discrimination against women, both of which are wrongly perceived as limiting what you can achieve in life. Formed in 2002, and there's Grace Anozie of Nigeria. You don't want to mess with her, I can tell you. Formed in 2002, one of the objectives of the IPC's Women in Sport Committee, led by Tine Tielman of Denmark, is to increase awareness and understanding of gender equality within and outside of the Paralympic movement. And one way in which we are achieving this goal is through the Paralympic Games. From London, the world's third biggest sporting event, and an event that has developed an enviable track record for tackling stereotypes, changing perceptions, and breaking down barriers. Now here you see Tatya McFadden, probably the greatest track athlete in the world today. And I mean, that's anybody on the track today. Won 5 gold medals at the World Championships last year, and won all 4 of the main marathons last year in Boston, in Chicago, in New York, and in London, and then switched to cross-country skiing in Sochi and got a silver. But really an amazing athlete, a Russian adopted by American parents, and back in Sochi, she met her birth mother for the first time. So a very emotional situation, but probably the greatest track athlete in the world. Our aim with the Games is gender parity in terms of participation and in the number of medal events for each sex. By 2016, around 1,650 women, roughly 38% of all athletes, will compete in the Rio Paralympic Games, more than double the 790 who competed just after the Brighton Declaration in Atlanta in '96. Women will also compete in 43% of all medal events, a 12% rise on London 2012, which has been partly helped by the introduction of 2 new sports, para-canoe and para-triathlon, 2 sports that will make the Games their debut in Rio, both offering the same number of events for women and for men. Although the figures are improving, as President Bach said, we're still facing major challenges. For example, at London, 1 in 3 participating countries had no female athletes. I'm not referring to the Olympic Games now, I'm referring to something later about what President Bach said. Had no female athletes, while sports such as football 5 and 7-a-side in the Summer Games have no women's competitions. In the Winter Paralympics, female participation has grown from 1 in 5 at the Nagano Games in '98 to 1 in 4 in Sochi earlier this year. Ice sledge hockey, one of 5 sports on our program, is still only open to male athletes, although measures are in place to address this by 2022. But to try and achieve gender parity in the Games, the growth has to be organic. And this, I think, is where I was referring back to what President Bach said, and has to come from the grassroots. It's no use creating more medal events for women if there are not enough athletes to compete at the highest level. Increasing participation is not easy, especially in countries where there are cultural barriers to women practicing sport. Role models are essential, and I'm delighted to see so many female Paralympians coming through who can inspire the next generation. This is Esther Vergeer of the Netherlands, the greatest, probably the greatest wheelchair tennis player ever. She retired after London, and now she's set up her own foundation, and she's going to put back into Paralympic sport what she got out of it, which is fantastic. At just 22 years old, the Dutch blade runner Malu van Rijn, here again from the Netherlands, I don't know why I'm concentrating on that orange country, but I seem to be, has the potential to become the most marketable Paralympian on the planet. And now we go to Zara Nemati, the first, here we go, the first Iranian woman. I'm going to have a drink. Cue for a drink. The first Iranian woman to win a Paralympic or Olympic gold medal in archery. She's really inspired thousands of women to get involved in sport in her home country, and can't be with us today because she's at the United Nations in New York. Coaching is also key, and it's important that strategies are implemented to increase the number of female elite coaches who can not only train more women, but also, of course, more men. Here we see Jenny Archer, the coach of Great Britain's David Weir, a 6-time Paralympic champion in wheelchair racing, one of the real heroes of London 2012. And this is perfect evidence of how a woman can rise to the top in international coaching and succeed. The Women in Sport Committee also strives to develop female leadership within the Paralympic movement and is finding this a more challenging area than increasing female participation in sport. Across the whole IPC membership, covering national Paralympic committees, international sport federations and organisations and regional organisations, just 24% of all key decision-making positions are taken by women. This issue was further highlighted last November when there were only 4 candidates out of 27 for the IPC General Assembly for President, Vice President and 10 Governing Board members. Although 3 were elected, they are still greatly outnumbered by 9 men, and we want you women to change that for us. Thank you very much. To tackle this issue, the Agitos Foundation, the IPC's development arm, launched a program called Womentoring in May, which aims to increase the number of women in leadership positions to 30%. The mentoring project, which is initially a pilot targeting Europe, involves 32 women from 20 IPC member organizations. And the aim is that over the next 2 years, mentees will gain and develop the tools and knowledge to continue to make their mark in sport. The mentors are experienced in a wide variety of sports organizations from both within and outside of the Paralympic movement, whilst the mentees are equally as varied, from athletes and coaches to secretaries and even some existing board members. If successful, the pilot will be rolled out globally, and hopefully soon we can see the same progress off the field of play as we have seen on it in recent years. On March the 8th, in accordance with the United Nations Women's Day, the IPC presents each year our International Women's Day Recognition Award to influential women within the Paralympic movement. Here we are in Sochi, and it may seem that I am being presented with the medal, though I can assure you that I am presenting it to Rima Batalova, who at the time was a vice president of the Russian National Paralympic Committee and is a 13-time Paralympic champion. Before I close, I'd like to thank Tina Tileman and fellow members of the IPC Women in Sports Committee. I'd also like to draw your attention to this lady, Bibian Mentel-Spee of the Netherlands. She won, here we go, she won gold in Sochi in the first ever time that para-snowboard took place in the Games, and that's also thanks to our Russian colleagues who made that happen along with ourselves. But the key here is not the gold medal, but that she campaigned for years for snowboard to be in the Games, and then she went along and won a gold medal. I'd also like to thank Anita de France and the IOC's committee, of which Teen is an active member. And it was a great, great experience, as I said in the press conference, to be at the IOC Women in Sport conference in 2003 in Marrakesh, when, like here, I think there were about 30 men and 600 women. And I just really realized what an effect it must be for women when they find themselves in that similar position. It was a very, very great experience that I hope I learned from. And I think also this, where we have a member on an IOC commission, and similarly we have the chairperson of the IOC Athletes Commission, also on the IPC Athletes Council. I think it shows that there's great cooperation between our two organizations, and I'd like to thank Thomas and his predecessor, Jacques Rogge, for that happening and that continuing to happen. So, quite simply, sport needs more women, and the IPC is fully committed to gender parity. I'd just like to finish by the words of a great Australian Paralympian called Donna Ritchie, and she captained the women's wheelchair basketball team in 2000 in Sydney. And at the end of our vision, we talk about exciting and inspiring and exciting the world. And before we inspire and excite, we probably surprise the world by the athletic performances. And then if we succeed then in inspiring and exciting, then we look to transform the world and change people's minds. And so she encapsulated it just in these really 2 sentences. She said, Paralympians don't have the time to worry about what doesn't work. They just maximize what does. So I think if we can take that with us and maximize every abilities you have, we're on a really good wicket here to lead the change and to be definitely part of that change. Thank you very much.